listening to the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network. I always tell people that Brian has got one of the most indelible personalities on planet Earth as a podcaster. I'm telling you, there's no one that's got the power, the impact, the gravitas of one Brian Ensminger. And so I must copy every single thing that he does, or I will fail. Very much like this episode of the Podcast Gauntlet, where you too must copy your favorite podcasters, or you will fail. Or will you? We're going to find out inside this episode of the Podcast Gauntlet, where we throw down, discuss, rise and shine in podcasting. Greetings, everybody. I'm Mike Wilkerson, one of your hosts.
And I'm Brian Ensminger, the other one of your hosts, and thinking you might want to set your sights a little higher if you're going to copy somebody.
I will do that. This is one that's, I think, been in the master list a while, but it's one that trips my trigger every time we talk about things to talk about inside the Gauntlet. And it's, I know it's like this because I deal with so many new podcasters in my podcasting career. And every time they'll come in, they'll have something that feels like it's alluding to somebody else rather than it being something of their own that's somehow original, that's just them. And again, for those of you that might just be tuning into the Podcast Gauntlet for the first time, our titles very often are the exact opposite of the context of what we're talking about inside of our episodes. And this is no different. Look, guys, there's a lot of things that you can do while you're podcasting, whether it be video or audio or whatever the conglomerate is now called of doing that.
Yeah.
But the gist is that you have got to be somehow you, because as much as you want to try and look at someone that you want to emulate and be exactly like, or notice a tip or a trick or a way that somebody is doing something inside of their program, the fact of the matter is it's not sustainable. There is no way to simply watch someone else and only copy what they're doing and then have some sense of not only legitimacy for your audience, but more importantly for yourself. There is a sense of acting, I think, that goes into podcasting. I know it does for me, but it's where there's definitively more snark inside of my podcast personality,
Maybe,
than my general personality. But the whole thing though is that it's me. You can look at that and go, "Oh, there he is." And I think it's never been more important, especially now as podcasting has now exploded over the course of the last 3-4 years, not only commercially, but I think just as an infusion of people finding a different tack to jump into podcasting because so many other people are succeeding with different models. Again, it's never been more important to not only have something that's original, but to have something that is original, but you.
Yeah, I love this topic so much because I see a lot of people online who are either trying to sell a way to make you successful like they were, or telling you that you just have to find your voice. You just have to be you. And on their own, either of those can have some level of value, but it's when it becomes the thing. So I would start out by saying, if you're just getting started, you probably don't know yourself enough in this context, the acting that Mike was just talking about, right? You're becoming a bit of a character. Even though you're still being true to yourself, you're becoming a bit of a character. You accentuate a few things. You hopefully speak with a little bit more presence and emotion, because that has to come through in the recording, than you might use if you're just sitting there talking with somebody on the couch. But you sort of have to step into that. You can't just say, I want to become this persona, because just like imitating somebody else, if that becomes a persona that you've made, that you're just imitating something that you've created in your head, it's still not being true to you. So I would say there's value in that side of it, but there's also some value in finding traits that you like about other people and trying them on for a bit, especially when you're new. I did that with my first show, the Engaging Missions show. I listened to a lot of, was it podcast? No, Entrepreneurs on Fire or EO Fire, whatever they call it now.
Sure.
And I started with that format, not because I thought it was me, but because it was something that I could emulate until I figured out what me was. And then I just started stepping out of that and becoming the persona that I have now. And I like to think that I'm the same persona across all of the shows that I do or have hosted or co-hosted. But I will say that also I bring maybe a little bit different flavor because sometimes the content or the context calls for something slightly different. Just like you wouldn't put Jim Carrey on the stage and expect him to be a clown if he's playing a semi-serious role, even though he's being true to who he is. I have to do the same thing. If I'm doing a show where the topic is a bit heavy, I can't play the village fool in that one. Where this show, I don't even have to play it. I just kind of am the village fool, and that works great. I don't know, Mike, I'm going to pass it back to you before I say something dumb.
It's funny that there's a project that I'm working on right now. In fact, we're going to be launching it formally here in this next month. It's the Blue Baggers Project, and the Blue Baggers Project is essentially the role-playing collective that I'm creating to help crisis negotiators across the world get some ass and seats time by talking to people that are the characters, the people that they're trying to talk down during crisis negotiation. And so it's funny that you're talking about not throwing on a personality, because it's one of the traits that I try and foster inside of that program, is to try and go and find people that can not only successfully do that, but then stay in a character across an extended period of time. Usually the scenarios run between 1.5 hours and 3 hours, depending on what the goals are, how large the team is, how many resources you're trying to manage, whatever that is. And you're absolutely right. For one, what I also love are the words when you say the words "true to yourself." Describe what that means for you, because I know that I have heard that many times, and I know that it's got just a completely different context for a lot of people. So go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I would say that's being true to yourself. To me, is the place where you're authentic to who you are and you're comfortable in your own skin. But that doesn't mean that you're not stretching a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I see it. If I was thinking of this as an actor, and of course I'm not an actor, but my daughter likes to do drama things, I would think of this as learning what the whole "what's my motivation" question. For me, it's pretty simple. I don't have to think about what's my motivation. I'm me. So I just do me. And that's like the easiest and probably worst thing I can possibly do. I'm just me. I might be a little bit uncomfortable. I might accentuate something else. But I don't have to go, am I uncomfortable with who I'm being right now? Because I'm just being me.
Yeah. Well, I think there's we always kind of accidentally scoop back into the concept of chemistry set when we start talking about podcasting. And I think it's one of the reasons that I get so much value out of the Podcast Gauntlet, not just because I'm speaking with you. And we have, and I think it was very quickly, we found a very comfortable chemistry set that you and I could just get on here and kind of yak philosophically. And I mean, it all has context, and I hope that it has a point. The growing audience shows that there's at least somebody that's paying attention.
It's my grandma.
But the most important part is something that you mentioned there that I think a lot of people forget about, is that, remember, while podcasting, you definitively want to have some goals, but you personally have to be getting something out of it. I mean, like, seriously, it doesn't mean you have to be lining your pockets with whatever time you're spending podcasting, but you physically have to be getting some value out of it. I think all of us have had either tasks inside of our professional work lives, or frankly, inside of our just extracurricular lives. I know that there was a series of times when my daughter was getting into a variety of different sports where I'm like, not only is she not having fun, me carting her ass around to the thing she's not having fun, it isn't any fun. Mm-hmm. And the ability to try and identify those things that, I'm not going to tell you that they're wastes of time, but where it becomes a time suck, where the value put into it could likely be put somewhere, somehow else. Those are all things to try and identify, not only inside of your podcast life, but I mean, your entire work life in general. I think a lot of us have become very complacent and comfortable with the things that we do and the things that we jump into because they either won't or don't need to change. Something that when you say, again, be yourself and be true to yourself, that component of wanting to continue to learn is also in there. At least for me, it is. The context of being a perpetual student is something I think that's lost on a lot of people, especially as people get old. They tend to think, or older, they tend to think that, well, I've already learned that, so there's nothing else to learn. That's not the way to think about your life. I don't think at all.
No.
There's always somebody that knows more. Reminds me and always guides me back to one of my favorite feature films, The Karate Kid. And it's not because I love that movie. It's because I love the lesson of that movie and the literal light bulb moments that you see inside of that movie. For those that haven't listened to our Podcast Gauntlet program before, the Cliff Notes version of it is this. In fact, we should probably put that on the master list, Brian. Is the context is this. You all, if you've seen The Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita, you know that there's Mr. Miyagi and you know there's Daniel-san. And you know that Daniel-san is just busting his ass because Mr. Miyagi is whipping him into shape, right? Just like, shut up and wash my car, go paint my fence, scrub my floors, get it done, get after it. And finally, Daniel-san just, he's kind of had enough of it. Miyagi's just kind of using him. He's sore and he's hurt and he's not really learning anything, right? Wrong. He learned so much. And it's that tiny little momentary light bulb moment. It was my very first identifiable light bulb moment that I can remember watching a movie where you can watch Daniel's face inside that scene. And it is transformative because rather than just being put upon, rather than being forced to do manual labor because, that little old Japanese dude is whipping your back, right? Get it done. Go scrub my floors, wash my cars, do all this. Instead of it becoming that, it becomes something far deeper where innate skill sets have been built without Daniel-san even knowing it's happening. And his realization moment is one I love to just think about it because it helps me understand that in everything, even the things that you guys think you're like uber professionals on, like, oh my God, Wilkerson's been podcasting for 20 years. Oh my God, blah. There's always something to learn, mostly because there's always somebody that knows more than you. Just like Miyagi, just like Daniel-san, just like me, and just like Brian. And that's why we keep coming back to do things like the Podcast Gauntlet to ask you guys about you finding your true selves inside of your podcast adventure. You know what we want to do, Brian? We want to ask the audience, what do you guys think of this? What else fuels you when it comes to finding that character, performing, or do you just not do that? You just flip a switch and start speaking. How do you guys do it? Let us know what you think by going over to our website over at podcastgauntlet.com. Fill out that quick web form and let us know what you think. You can also contact us via the social media ribbon that's created inside the show notes here inside of the YouTubes. We'd also like you to push the like button that's over in this general area, I think over in this vector over here. So be sure to push that. But we want to know what you guys think. Brian, anything last?
I think I really want to key in on the bit you talked about with continuous improvement, because there are myriad things that I love about podcasting in general and being involved in it, podcasting as a verb. But I think of all of the things that I've taken away, and there have been many in terms of relationships and skill sets and things like that, the biggest thing that I've taken away from it is that desire and the requirement of a desire to continually not reinvent myself, but continually sort of take the snake analogy, molt my skin, outgrow myself and grow into another thing. Not that I'm creating a new me, but I'm just continually learning and growing. And that's what I see in most of the people in the podcasting space that I want to continue hanging around with. They're not people with this victim mentality or anything like that. They're just going, how can I get better? How can I do better? Sometimes that's in terms of metrics. Often it's in terms of how can I be a better podcaster? And that bleeds over into every area of our lives. How can I be a better parent? How can I be a better employee? All of those things, because that mindset is an absolute requirement as a podcaster, because you're often a one-man show in an industry that could have had 30 people on the team, but you're doing it all.
100%. 100%. Again, it's again, what I love about this program, Brian, is that every time we start talking about something, there's 500,000 or 600,000 other things that pop up that need to be items inside of our master list for this program, and this is one of them. The ideas and the motivational adventure that happens inside of this program. It fuels me, and I hope that it fuels all of you, so that you too will join us and discuss, rise, and shine in podcasting. Until next time, I'm Mike Wilkerson, one of your hosts.
And I'm Brian Ensminger, and I'm still one of your other hosts.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.